if you can get in the mindset of all those different business units, you're really cooking on gas, because suddenly you're a step ahead. You know what they think, and you're more likely to kind of drive more effective conversations and results off the back of it. It's easy to see ops as kind of like a secondary function, if you like, a sort of bolt on to sort of enable sales, that or enable sort of revenue driving activities, which, to some extent it very much is. But I think overall, I see ops at least as very much the foundation of the strategy, that results in actually those revenue driving activities, and very much a core function of any business has got a really strong ops department in my experience to date. And I think they're absolutely core part of driving that. So you have to be collaborative, you have to be a team player, you have to have good commercial acumen as well as a really good sort of technical background as well. But it's a really good sort of all-rounder position to be in. You get to sort of speak with lots of people, different parts of the business, and I think if you're that type of person that enjoys being in that space and happy sort of being in sort of constantly moving dynamics and an evolving role, then ops is a great place to be. And I don't know if that's a good start to how I'd intro it, Tom, but that's kind of what springs to mind.
It's an excellent start. And you said something there, which is it's an all-rounder role. And the interesting thing about this is people take all sorts of journeys into the role, and that really influences how they can be an all-rounder because they've seen lots of stuff. So like Alex, before you started ops, what are some of the key things you learned that's helping you in the role today, and how's it influencing you and how you play that all-rounder collaborative strategic ops thinker?
Yeah, exactly. So I think for every role that I've been in, nothing's sort of been wasted. So like I told you in the past, I've sort of done a few different roles from, sales, direct sales myself, through to sort of managing a sales team, through to then project and sort of product scale ups, go to market work, and then finally into the sort of more classic revenue ops space. But in every part of that journey, I sort of learned, well, what do these people care about most? What do those people care about most? And before you know it, you start to understand some of those natural biases that exist across all businesses. So I think understanding, how all of the different chunks of a business fit together, how they work, how they operate sort of collaboratively. If you can get in the mindset of all those different business units, you're really cooking on gas, because suddenly you're a step ahead. You know what they think, and you're more likely to kind of, drive more effective conversations and results off the back of it. So I think that's one thing, is just sort of, everything that you've done in the past, it's still, if you still wanted to go down the ops route, I guarantee that the stuff that you can leverage from previous roles that will get you there. So like I say, whether that's sales, product, marketing, lots of applicable stuff that you still need in an ops role.
That's awesome. Let's apply that then to the theme of today of processes. Just start with the big picture here, the big why. At every level of the business, why do processes matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a few things really. I guess what it boils down to is, if process really isn't in place or adopted sufficiently, then you don't really know what data in your business is good. And as we all know, with any sort of tech business, really, like, data is driving those businesses in one shape or another. Like, they're helping everyone make decisions all day, every day. And if those processes start to sort of unravel and aren't fully adopted and overcomplicated, unclear, lack of sort of agreement or understanding across a business, then it starts to get pretty shaky, and the foundations, if you like, start to crumble beneath you, and suddenly you're making decisions based on dodgy data, and no one wants to be doing that. So process really is key. But there's a few things in my experience that have that I think where areas where things can fall down is where there's not that sort of collaborative process sort of creation going on. And what I mean by that is sort of one-way traffic sort of process being driven downwards towards a sales organization, whether that's from ops or finance or whatever. I do think that there's always space to work collaboratively on process or KPI setting or whatever it might be. And I find that, as soon as you can start to help people understand the requirement for good process and for certain KPIs being followed and measured and all the rest of it, if you can build up that mutual understanding across a business, then you're much more likely to have good process adoption. And then, like I said, all the great stuff that then comes with that. You can measure stuff effectively. You can have real conviction in your forecasting. You name it. It all flows from the business having a mutual agreement and understanding that process is the right process to be following.
Such a good answer, Alex. And the theme of much of this discussion then is awesome partnership between ops and sales. And the fantastic thing about you is you've been in sales, like you said, being a seller, being a sales leader. You may not have any, but I wonder whether you can recall a time where there has been a top-down process setting, what that felt like as a salesperson, why it didn't work, and on the back of this, what ops can do to partner well from your perspective of having sold. Like what mattered to you in a good partnership, and what made you partner when you did?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, actually, there's kind of probably an example where I've got it wrong in the past, where maybe I was the one who was trying to set the process, or I've seen it happen. So yeah, I mean, a great example. I think that the question that businesses are obviously often asking the frontline sales force is, what are our customers telling us? And just reading between the lines on that, often it's because of challenges against hitting targets or business objectives that we have. Obviously it's only natural to want to know, is this a product driven thing? Is it a competitor driven thing? What is it? And obviously, sales guys are often on the front line and they hold that extremely sensitive and interesting information. And I remember in the past being in a team where we were trying to gather that at scale. And the immediate thing, the obvious thing is, well, let's ask the sales guys, what sort of process can we implement so that we are gathering that information on a recurring basis from our customers, whether that's through a CRM or whether that's through just Excel or surveys or whatever it might be. But if you try to inflict that downwards and don't give that context as to why that information is so important, you're going to be on the back foot. You're going to put people in a defensive position. So the way that I've tried to always look at things is, how can I sell in, use the sort of put my sales hat on, if you like, myself, and how can I sell in a process improvement or, information that we need to collectively learn? But then more importantly, how is that going to benefit you in the long term as the salesperson collecting that information? And I think that's the step that is so often left behind. It's like, we need to do this, help us find that information. But you've got to really, frankly, lead with the what's in it for you. And, I'll be honest, there's not always a big what's in it for you as the sales guy, but often, that there is. And it's just a case of bringing that out and really thinking it, well, if we collect all this information, it will help us put more money into marketing or improving our product. And that in turn is going to help you make more sales. So there is always a way to flip that. But I think, the risk in any ops team is that just, it's a top down thing. And we've got to be super careful about doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I'm sure there's times when you've sold or been around sales folks when the prospect is interested.
Yeah.
Maybe before the contract is signed. How does that feel as an ops person? How do we know that sales are on board? What key signs can we look for? It's kind of like a process of making a process there, I guess.
How do you mean? Do you mean how do we know that a deal is sort of on the horizon, or
how do we know that our sales team are bought in? They understand what's in it for them, and they're locked in, and they're going to be a key partner here in doing this. What are the big tells?
Gotcha. I'd say it's getting a sort of champion, if you like, or getting someone who is has that sort of slight opsy nature to them from the sales side. Like in any sort of team that I've worked in the past, there's always been a few people on the sales front who naturally gravitate towards you. They want to be that they're more interested maybe in, or have a natural interest in the systems, the processes behind the scenes, and actually just genuinely have that motive to want to help and to want to make things better for a collective audience. And whether that's whether that's because they see it as their sort of their duty, they're just natural leaders that they want to sort of, step up and support and try to improve things versus just sort of consume, that's also okay. It's not in everyone's nature, but I think that's been, a really winning formula for me in the past, is realizing who are those people on the sales side who are brilliant ambassadors for the operations team, partner up really, really closely with them, and almost, use them, collaborate with them to sort of get that message out to the rest of the field teams. That's been really, really successful for me. And I think a final thing I'd say on that is, whenever any process is sort of being implemented or new forecasting methodologies or whatever it might be, I sort of very much see it as a negotiation. So actually, I'd be happy to concede ground, if you like, in certain areas of process setting, if I know that I'm going to get something simple that's very, very well adopted versus something that's overbaked, overcooked, overcomplicated that's not. And I think, again, that's a really good thing. If you leave yourself a bit of wiggle room as an ops person to say, I'll concede on this if we can do a really, really solid job of a simpler version, then I'm going to opt for that every single time. So I think, see it as a negotiation process setting as much as anything.
That's really that's a super interesting psychological effect there, where I would imagine maybe people buy in more to those areas that we all have collectively agreed to, then, because we didn't agree to these things, we agreed to these. Perhaps exactly. that really helps buy in. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So we have our partners, we have the process we want to do, we know what we want to get out of it. It's been rolling for a while. The question is, Alex, what are some of the keys to long-term adoption, especially when things are fast moving in SaaS and tech?
Yeah, definitely. I think the few sort of key things that, regardless of the sort of the business model, almost the speed of the business, arguably, there's sort of three key things for me. It's about rhythm, accountability, and simplicity. And I think you can't really afford to drop any of those three. I think whether it's on, from a forecasting perspective, or whether it's, on a monthly or a quarterly basis, whatever process is running across the business, I think those are the three things that you can't stray too far away from. And as soon as you drop one, you're really in trouble. So, for example, if I know that every single Monday before 11 a.m., account executives are responsible for X, they go here, they do this, there's zero friction because it's a great tool. You get a good result off the back of it. I suppose it makes sense, right? It's not really too surprising. But as soon as you drop either that rhythm, that sort of continuous cycle, whatever, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, or that accountability on who's actually responsible, and then that simplicity, and that's where, the tool that you're using really comes into play. That's when things start to fall down around you quite quickly. And obviously then suddenly you lose that integrity and that conviction in your forecasting or your, whatever data you're looking at. So I think for long-term success, it's just that keeping up with the changes of the business. And as the business evolves and priorities change, the things that can't change are those three things: rhythm, accountability, and simplicity. You have to keep those three things up. Keep setting expectations and keep that cadence going. I think that's been quite successful for me.
Awesome. So rhythm is a bit like a cadence there, in other words.
Right. That's right. Yeah. It's that muscle memory, right? Like, know that, Thursdays every other week, that we're going to talk about XYZ. And as a business leader, as a leader in, whether it's in a sort of retention style, framework, or whether it's in a more classic sort of sales or pipeline generation framework, whatever you're in, as long as those people across the business know when those sessions are happening, suddenly you start to wire yourself to be in tune with that rhythm. And before you know it, everyone's on the same page and we're all sort of beating to the same drum.
Yeah, okay. And putting it in a specific time and place, make sure it's a real thing rather than perhaps something that can come. Okay.
Exactly.
So that's an example where process goes really well. This is awesome. We have adoption, we have buy-in, we have a partnership. We know it's going to work because we negotiated, or we could also say brainstormed collectively. But not all processes will work, or maybe needs change, right? So talk me through how you know and how you come to the decision to kill off a process, or maybe to drastically change it. What's some of the tell signs there, and how does that work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, normally it starts for me when I start to notice, I guess, a bit of a sort of lull in that sort of accountability spot. As soon as, for example, you start to see, um, you know, tools sort of not inputted into, not adopted, you see feedback start to dip. You see that sort of, you can sense it across a business when something starts to fall away. You know that it's time to either knuckle down, double down, sort of get back on it and figure out, how do we light this back up again and crack on? Or is it just time that naturally, the business has pivoted elsewhere and we need to just sort of, not chase after it and accept that, it's the end of a good thing. And that's pretty common as well. Like, say you have new product launches and you're, for a few months, that product might be in an incubation stage. It's only right that you would want to be absolutely all over it with a really, really close touch point with sales, marketing, ops, whatever it might be. But it doesn't mean that that needs to last forever. And you need to accept when you make that trade off between people's time and focus on other things. So I think it's just about getting a sense of the room. And that's where I think in operations, it's really important that you're someone that has sort of that sort of ability and sort of natural sense. Like, it's difficult to sort of teach that, but you need to just learn, how other people are feeling about things. And obviously you can just ask people outright, do you think we should stop this? Like, why, what's going on here? Are you not interested in this anymore? Does it, you feel like it's not good use of your time? You're not getting value out of it. What is it? But yeah, it's normally, for me, I find it pretty easy to start to see those sort of fractures happening when processes are falling down, and it's not always a bad thing to scrap things and move on. So yeah, it's kind of like a natural thing, I guess, that just, it's just a natural business motion, I suppose, that phases out.
Yeah, you have a, what you highlighted there is a good opportunity, because it's a chance for another discovery. It sounds like, is this working for you? Is it providing value? Is this still a problem? It sounds like, do you ever get it where that leads to actually some quite interesting new processes or things learned?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a great example, I remember a product a couple of roles back. There was a product that we were launching and we were trying to gain, feedback on the sort of buying cycle of a customer to sort of adopting into our product, and how long they were intending to use it for, and sort of budgets they were actually looking to put behind it. And it soon became clear that we were never really tracking quite the right things to begin with. We were just slightly off. And actually, the way that we'd set things up, we probably hadn't done the best job in sort of aligning up front on what the priority should be. But equally, it was, a new product. It's really difficult sometimes to know what is the right things to be tracking and to be sort of considering as success measures. It's not always crystal clear. So yeah, sometimes, like you say, just by digging in a month down the line, you soon find out that actually, it makes sense that we sort of move slightly away from this. And that can be that you scrap something altogether. Or it could be that actually, we need to think about things differently rather than tracking, new adoption onto that product and usage. Maybe we want to be thinking about, how long are they using it for instead, and what's the typical buying cycle, or whatever it might be. And, that's a whole different discussion. So it's only natural that as products in tech sort of develop or businesses scale up, that you start to think about things differently. The key is just not being sort of too egotistical about it, and sort of being adamant that you need to stick on a process, and having that confidence to be able to say to other people across the business too, look guys, this has run its course, we're going to stop it, it's not a good use of our time anymore, and explain why. And I think, too often people not necessarily don't like making those tough decisions, but I think they're the people that I sort of typically look up to and say, great, cool, good, blend of common sense and using the field's perspective and data to also inform that. So yeah, it's a bit of a sort of art and science, I'd say.
Okay, I'm really glad you bring up the point about being adamant and maybe perhaps even egotistical, because I'll say there have been times when I've tried to roll out a process with the team, and I've slightly died on the hill because I was worried about the reputational risk. Like, if this process didn't work, why would they trust the next process that I would try to roll out? But it sounds like what you're saying is, if you just explain it with common sense, you actually, that's where the reputational thing comes in there, because you're being logical and helpful.
That's right. That's absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Cool. Finally, like not quite finally, but as kind of concluding thoughts here. What does a successful process really mean and look like? Like, how do you not just measure success, but when you think about some of the best processes you've worked out and they've worked out really well, what are you judging those by?
Yeah. I think I guess an obvious thing for me is firstly like building processes where there's an end state, that there's a level of automation that you know that's achievable. I think the worst thing is setting up a process where you know that it's going to be a heavy lift manually for, you know, whether it's sales, product, engineers, doesn't really matter. Like, I think having an end game in sight. So, you know, when you're designing that first process, it might be quite scrappy and it might be quite manual, but knowing that it can scale, or at least having that in your line of sight when you're building process in the first instance. So I guess thinking a few months down the line, that's pretty cool, because, you know, if you can set that vision early, people are more likely, firstly, to be kind of okay with, you know, what you're implementing in the short term. They know that it's not forever. They know that stuff just doesn't get built overnight. And, you know, in the tech world, everything has to be sort of scoped out. Resources need to be considered ahead of changes being made in products or CRMs or whatever systems you're using for your tracking. So I guess that's pretty important, that you get that right from the get-go, or at least think about scale. Ownership, I guess maybe it goes without saying, but, you know, everyone knowing where they sit in a process, knowing that level of responsibility. And, you know, I'd go as far to say, you know, having a sort of level of backup as well. You know, I've been involved in a couple of processes in the past that are broken down because, you know, people have gone off on leave. There wasn't people, or someone had left the business, whatever, and before you know it, things have fallen down. So I guess, you know, just making sure that the mapping of who's doing what is crystal clear, and if they can't do it, who can step in. So, you know, see it as like a kind of you know, as a collective team effort. Everyone needs to know the part that they play, and you know, be sort of bought into that, but also know that longer term we're gonna automate this anyway, and this is how, you know, and then people are more likely to want to support in the short term if there's sort of like a dream state further ahead, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah. So when there's some legacy involved there, that's when we know we've done a good job.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay. Final question then, Alex. If you're in a room full of sales ops or rev ops,
Yep.
like superstars, best ever kind of people, what would you ask them?
Yeah, I think for me, the sort of coming to my own conclusions on kind of, you know, what makes sort of real sort of top performers in this space. It's quite a difficult, you know, it's not like in engineering where you can, you know, code a product so quickly and get it out, and you know, sort of there's often not as many sort of tangible outputs in the RevOps space. So it is kind of sometimes difficult to sort of measure success and truly attribute, you know, brilliant work to certain individuals. And, you know, maybe that's just a function of the role. So I think, to your point, I'd probably ask them, you know, how much is down to soft skills versus hard skills. And my sense, and, you know, I've asked a few people who have really sort of excelled in this space, and they've said that it's, you know, predominantly soft skill based, that, you know, you can learn process, products, databases, data manipulation, data presentation. Like, you can learn all that stuff, and it's more about the soft skills. They're the sort of timeless ones, you know. So negotiation, social intelligence, ability to influence, sell. Like sales is so important. Or, you know, being really organized and being great at organizing other people. I think for me, they're probably the most important things, but that's probably what I'd pick those people's brains on. It wouldn't be around, you know, what's your, you know, your sort of favorite, you know, your tools, or your sort of, you know, the way that you do XYZ. It's more about, for me, what are the skills that, you know, you truly think, the soft skills that you know, that you think have got you to where you are, and what couldn't you sort of live without, as it were.
Yeah, okay. That's genuinely one of my favorite answers to that question.